Okay, thank you. When I was invited to this talk, I was very happy to come back to Belgrade. On the other hand, I was also somewhat worried because I thought, what on earth can I say on the question, what is it to win a war that would be longer than 2 minutes or something, right? There is, of course, I mean, I'm sometimes very critical towards our own profession. We have to come up with new topics all the time in order to publish papers. So we have now huge discussion about jus post bellum. If you ask me, I don't think it really, strictly speaking, belongs to just war theory. Maybe parts of it do, but those parts can be covered under jus ad bellum, and other parts of it are, in my view, simply questions of social justice. And David Roden will give a talk about jus terminatio, the ethics of ending a war, and Daryl Moellendorf has also said something about jus ex bello. I think this is simply completely covered by jus ad bellum. Jus ad bellum concerns the conditions or the justifiability of entering a war and continuing a war. I don't really see why you need an additional category here, unless, of course, you want to keep, you know, the papers and the journals full with articles, right? Now, of course, we have somehow to come up with new topics, and one can. I found myself in the position to basically agree with everything Asa said in the first half of his talk. I think winning a war is really basically about the military victory. So I would disagree with a lot of what Angelo said. But it's interesting, in a way you could say that Asa was basically stating the obvious, right? Oh, that's boring. And Angelo was terribly sophisticated, right? And still I would more side with Asa than with Angelo here, but we might talk about this more later. Now, I think that, that winning a war and prospects of success are two very different things. I mean, the concept of success is conceptually connected to the aims of the actor. Right? You succeed in your course of action if you achieve with your course of action what you wanted to achieve with it, right? That seems not to be quite the same with victory. Now, consider a boxer who has bet on his own loss. Right? The mafia, the mobsters approach him and say, if you throw the fight, we pay you $1 million, right? And the boxer says, this is fantastic. If I win the fight, I would never make that much money. If I lose it, make a lot of money, right? And he wants to lose it, right? So he fights, but suddenly he throws a lucky punch and his opponent goes down. What has happened? Well, he has won the bout. He has won the boxing match. However, he did not succeed in his aims, so he has unsuccessfully won, right? He might even be killed afterwards by the mafia. All kinds of terrible things can happen to him, but he did not succeed. He won. You can also have the other way around, that he actually does lose, and he is on the ground, and you know the referee counts him out, and while he's on the ground, he's grinning to himself and say, I did a really good job, I will get the money, this was really successful, right? So you can successfully lose, and you can unsuccessfully win. And it seems to me the same can happen, of course, in war, right? So the enemy, or let's say there's some weird kind of nation, with a weird kind of religion. And the high priest of the nation has told them, look, the genocidal enemy is on its way to exterminate us all. And that's actually a good thing, because the gods have told me that if we will all be exterminated, we will all go to heaven. However, we have to fight as hard as we can. If we just stay there and get slaughtered, we will go directly to hell. But if we fight as hard as we can, we will go to heaven if we fight off the enemy, let's say, for half a year, right? Now, actually, they defeat the enemy, right? They fight as hard as they can, and the enemy is going down, is begging for mercy. What happened? Well, they have won the war, But they have not succeeded in their aims. Their aims was actually to lose and to go to heaven or whatever, right? And of course, again, you can have it the other way around. Now, you might say, how is this relevant? Well, it's a conceptual point. I don't think that prospects of success or success and winning is exactly the same. And now, did these people need prospects of success in order to be justified in waging the war? It does not seem so. I mean, if a genocidal dictator or the genocidal enemy is coming at you and trying to kill you all, then you are justified in defending yourself. It seems not to play much of a role whether you are defending yourself in order to go into heaven or something like this. I think there is a subjective element to justifiable warfighting. So you must be aware that certain objective conditions of proportionality are fulfilled, right? But and that goes back to Nets Dobo's point, that is proportionality, that is not success. So these people could, for example, this weird nation could think, well, we don't really want to win, but by fighting this war and by holding the enemy off for a year, this very same enemy won't have the chance to attack the other peaceful nation and exterminate them, because then other people or other nations have time to establish some kind of buffer zone, and so we will actually achieve something very good. However, we are not waging the war in order to achieve this good end. This is not our aim. We just know that this will come about. So in bringing this about, they are not really succeeding in their aims. Rather, they know that something good will come out of it. And this is, and by knowing this, they satisfy what I would call the subjective element of justified wars. Many call this right intention. I think you don't have to fight for so-called just wars in order to satisfy the subjective element in just war theory. Now, sometimes it is said, and Jovan said, that it would be utterly irresponsible to fight a war if you don't have any kind of prospects of success. But of course, prospects of success is also a partly objective concept. It says prospects of success. It doesn't say delusional belief in success, right? So if our attacked state, the state attacked by the genocidal enemy, believes they can actually succeed in fighting off the enemy for half a year. But this belief is entirely illusional, and objectively speaking, there are no prospects of success. Would that make their defense unjustified? It doesn't look so to me. The same would be in the case of self-defense. If somebody goes at you with a knife and tries to stab you and you defend yourself, thinking that you can overcome this super warrior or something like this, you might just be deceiving yourself, but that doesn't mean that your resistance is unjustified. So what all this comes up to is that I basically don't think that you need to satisfy any condition of prospects of success if you are defending yourself, for example, against an enemy. Now, this is sometimes, of course, denied under hint to the justification of self-defense. I mean, a lot of philosophers try to justify wars under an appeal to self-defense. I think this is mistaken, but anyway. The idea there is allegedly you need a success condition on self-defense, and I talked about this 2 years ago. I will not repeat what I said there. But that seems to me simply mistaken. Self-defense is directed against the text. It's not defined as averting or mitigating harms. And I think as long as you resist an attacker, that counts as self-defense. For example, there's this famous or always used example of the woman, a rape victim, who knows she cannot overcome the rapist but is still defending herself, resisting the aggressor. And intuitively seems that this is justified. Now, some people think that if she actually knows that she cannot overcome the aggressor, that she cannot stop his attack, then it's unjustified. I don't understand why. I don't think this is implied by the necessity condition as we find it, for example, in law, nor by the proportionality condition. You have to have a very peculiar interpretation of these conditions to come up with this kind of success condition. Now, but even if some then say it's a definitional issue, right? They say, oh, by definition, you have to aim at averting and mitigating harms. Well, you really don't by definition, maybe by your own definition, but for example, most lawyers really don't use, you defend yourself against attacks, right? That's attack and defense go together. Harm and defense go not together. It sounds weird to say, I defended myself against the harm. Yeah, I averted the harm, but did I defend myself against it? I don't know. But forget about this. Even if somebody grants this definition of self-defense, then you could still say, well, but the woman is still justified in doing what she does to the attacker. Why? Well, maybe it's not self-defense. Maybe it's the right to resist. Francis Cam has recently argued to the same point, but this is, of course, an old point already made by past authors, Sanford Kadish, for example, that there is a right to resist an aggressor. And Immanuel Kant would actually say there's a duty to resist an aggressor, and he nowhere mentions any kind of success condition. So since there's no particular need to justify any act you do in war under an appeal to the self-defense justification, you just change your justification, say, okay, maybe this is not self-defense literally speaking, but it's an act of resisting an aggressor, and it's a justified act of resisting an aggressor, and therefore I don't really need prospects of success at all. You could even, for that matter, appeal to maybe a right to punish. Of course, it's often said that the only legitimate agencies that can punish somebody else are duly constituted states or some other duly constituted international organizations. But of course, a war is a kind of fall back into a state of nature, and it would seem that then you can punish an aggressor if nobody else is doing it. I also share, for example, Angelo's retributive intuitions, and I really don't see why we should start crying over the attacker who's trying to rape the woman if she harms him, even if harming him does not serve allegedly any defensive purpose. Well, to be quite honest, this is precisely what I meant at the start. I had no idea what I could say on this issue going beyond a minute. I went a little bit more beyond a minute, but I really think that what it means to win a war is basically to overcome your enemy militarily. And if this enemy is just not willing to give in and just fights on, well, then you haven't won the war, right? But if the enemy says, okay, we see it, you have beaten us, we surrender, well, then it seems to me you have won the war. Of course, it might well be true that you have not succeeded and that all kinds of bad things come out of the war. That does not necessarily mean that you haven't won it. You can use this language if you want to, but I don't really think that it clarifies the issues at stake. The other question is, of course, I said already something about it, but do you at least have to achieve your political goals? But I talked about this too. Not really, because if prospects of success is, as I said, conceptually bound to the aims that you have, you don't have, in order to justify this wage of war, you don't really need any prospects of success, because your aims might just be so weird that you have no chance of actually achieving them. But as long as you are aware of the fact that you are war might have some good effects and might be proportionate. So you produce more good than bad, and you have a just cause. It's a culpable aggressor who's standing up against you. Then it doesn't really mean if you achieve your personal aims. What's important is that the proportionality and just cause conditions are justified, and that the subjective element is justified. And as I said, or satisfied. And as I said, the subjective element refers to your awareness of that the objective conditions are satisfied, and not to your intention of waging the war with the intention of achieving a particularly a good goal. You find this also in a lot of jurisdiction. For example, self-defense lawyers, the majority of them say there's a subjective element to justified self-defense. And this subjective element is precisely what I just made it out to be, namely that you are aware that certain conditions are fulfilled. You know you're under attack, and you can attack yourself in a necessary and proportionate way under these conditions. It is not necessary that you have a specific defensive intent. There are some lawyers, and obviously much more philosophers, who think that you need this specific defensive intent, but it is completely unclear why. One would at least like to see an argument why you need to have this. So if you can defend yourself against an attacker without having the specific defensive I mean, to give you an example, this sounds very abstract, right? Consider you always wanted to commit suicide, you know, but on the other hand, people would frown upon you, and you are concerned about your legacy, and now somebody is attacking you, but you also always had this kind of honor codex that you said, if somebody is attacking me, I will defend myself. I will not just go down without defending myself. So the guy is attacking you, and you actually wish, I hope he kills me. Because if he kills me, then finally it's all done, it's all over, fantastic. But you defend yourself against him anyway, because this is part of your warrior code or whatever you have, right? Now, a lot of lawyers would say that as long as you know that under these conditions you can defend yourself proportionately and your self-defensive force is necessary, and you are aware of this, all is fine. And I think this is true. You don't have, in the face of a culpable aggressor that tries to kill you only because he doesn't like your nose, you don't have to defend yourself with a specific intent to defend yourself against them. I mean, this aggressor has basically forfeited his right against counterattack, and this seems to be sufficient. So to sum up, I really don't think that prospects of success are a necessary criterion for the justifiability of war. And I think that winning a war is basically what Ardha Kasha said winning a war is, right? You win it if you overcome militarily your enemy. That doesn't mean that you achieve your goals. That's, of course, something completely different. But achieving your goals is not necessary for waging a war justifiably. And that's it. Thank you.